Welcome to TechXY Turbo, a tech podcast providing independent technology content and perspectives. On our first ever episode, I'm pleased to be joined by Larry Mietus. Larry, also known as the Chief Excuse Obliterator, is the founder of Speaking of Strategy, where he helps businesses eliminate roadblocks to success. Larry's a business consultant, author, podcaster, and educator, and brings decades of hands-on experience to his clients who range from small businesses to global enterprises. Larry is also a former instructor of mine. We worked together over 10 years ago, and much of what I learned from business and tech comes from that class. So I'm enormously pleased to have him here on our first ever episode. How are you doing today, Larry?
Frank, I'm doing really well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Larry, we're going to get into it, talk about AI, role in leadership, technology in business, and how you, as a consultant, have adapted. But first, can you tell our listeners about yourself, what you do, and the work you're currently involved in?
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm an independent business consultant. So I'm a solopreneur, entrepreneur, and I've been in that space now for 19 years. The first 4 years, I worked for another firm. The last 15 years, I've been out on my own. And I'm a media guest, educator. I've been around higher education now 28 years in some way, shape, or form. Author. My book was published in October of 2020, so about 4.5 years ago. And professional speaker. I've been speaking since I was in 6th grade in public, which was quite a while ago, and figured out that I liked it and never looked back. And, really, if I look at my clients, probably half of my clients, Frank, are companies that are doing well already and incrementally want to figure out how to do a little bit better. But probably half of my clients aren't doing as well as they'd like to and can't figure out why. And it's often refreshing and optimizing for them to bring in someone like me from the outside who has no emotional ties, no political ties, no preconceived notions, not jaded, hopefully, by the industry that they're in, and sort of help them analyze what's happening, where do you want to go, how are you going to get there as a company, and then what do we need to do to make that happen. So that's how I keep myself out of trouble.
That's interesting and fascinating. And I would imagine, everywhere we look now, you're seeing headlines about AI, about the new language model, about a new tool. And, given your work where you're helping businesses, I'm wondering, you've worked as an HR practitioner, a coach, you were an instructor for me. What do you think is going to be the biggest impact here? Like, what are you seeing out there that's disrupting among the people you're talking to?
Well, it's a lot like other things I've seen, in the course of my lifetime and yours as well. And the same for the listeners. There tend to be 3 groups of people whenever something quote unquote new hits the radar screen. There are people that embrace it, get out ahead of it, and want to run with it. There are people sort of in the middle lane saying, well, I'm just going to sit here and look around and see what everybody else does, because this whole thing, this AI thing, just might be a flash in the pan. And then there are people in the third lane who clearly want to pretend it's not real, don't want to get involved, aren't doing anything proactive, may not even be doing anything reactive. And really, I think those are the 3 major groups of how people shake out when things like this happen. You heard different terms. It depends what camp the terminology is coming from. You hear terms like, threatening, AI is threatening to humans, threatening to people. You hear terms like game changer. You hear thoughts like this is going to put everybody I know, including myself, out of work. Long story short, I look at it this way. I could take a metal wrench out of a toolbox, and I could use it, or someone else could use it to fix something, work on somebody's house, work on somebody's car, or I could whack somebody in the head with that metal wrench and hurt them. AI is another tool in our toolbox as a world, as a globe, that we can decide what to do with. We can certainly do bad things with it, but we can certainly, I think, do phenomenally great things with it. But we have to make that choice.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was talking to someone else, and there's a lot of fear, I think, of tech for surveillance, for control. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. It's much a tool. I grew up and I remembered going to the moon was an example of the optimism and promise of tech. Like, I mean, tech is solving really big problems, right, and helping us. So very much. So I see on LinkedIn, you've tried some courses, right, where you've had seminars for business users, presumably your clients, prospects, about AI. So I'm curious, like, how did those go, and what were people asking you? Like, what were they looking for from you, and how do you think those sessions went? And will you be doing more of them for anyone who
Yes, I
might be
will. I
interested?
think they went really, really well. And you never know who's going to be in the room, but that's typical with any public seminar that I do on almost any topic: leadership, management, motivation, AI, and leadership. You never get 100% of the people in the room that have the same level of experience or background or inquisitiveness, or intellectual horsepower. It always runs the gamut. It's mostly people coming from a position of curiosity, but linked to what I just said a couple of minutes ago. Some of their curiosity is, how do I get in front of this, or at least try to run with the pack? And some of the curiosity is, do I have to do this at all? And I get questions like, do I have to do this at all inside my company? Do I have to be, some type of tech genius to figure out how to do this? Do I have to hire more tech people from my organization to utilize artificial intelligence? There are some security reasons. I've dealt with some pretty large international companies who, candidly, for all the right reasons, had some security issues and some concerns. I've met some big players on the landscape of manufacturing and industry and business who, instead of utilizing or trying the tools that are already in the marketplace, the chat GPTs of the world, et cetera, some of them are already in a lane of, we're just going to develop our own in-house and we're going to feel safe there. And then if we have to venture outside of those walls, of those boundaries, we will. Most of the people I'm dealing with, Frank, are positively curious. They want to figure out how to embrace AI to make their lives better, their businesses more successful, create more free time for themselves, and then do 1,000 other things. So the good news is I think people aren't really afraid. And one piece of data, I'll misquote it, but I actually learned it quite a while ago on a financial seminar that I was on. And they took the amount of time it took for days, weeks, months, or years for the public, the world, to embrace certain types of technology. And it went all the way back to the telephone. It was the telephone and the fax machine and the internet. And they had charted out how many years or months it took for people to embrace this technology. And then they got to AI, and it was like 32 days, where some of the others had been 4 or 5 years. And they said, this is a runaway gazelle that's not coming back to the zoo. It's not coming back to the barn. You either run with it, or you're going to find out that you're going to be behind. So, that's where most of the interest has been. How do I use it? And it's just like when people really had more access than ever before to a desktop, to a laptop, to a computer. We have to get people through that mindset of, I'm going to break something, so I won't touch it, versus this is pretty difficult to break. And even if you have a glitch, you can get through it.
Yeah, very interesting. And thank you. So what's your go-to tool, Larry? What's your go-to AI tool? If I would say one that you use the most, and why you use it?
I'm clearly, I've test driven a few, but right now I'm clearly in the chat GPT 4.0 camp. Why do I use it? Every day I experiment. I go to seminars that other people are teaching to learn some tricks, some behind the scenes, prompts and things like that. And it's utterly amazing what it can do. And what I want people to remember is AI is simply harnessing data. And you go back and say to yourself, why does anyone collect data? Data is great if you know how to use it, if you know how to analyze it, and if you know how to streamline it. And to me, that's what AI does. I could go online. I use myself as an example as a professional speaker. I can go online. I used to go online for years and Google things like, tell me about the upcoming leadership conferences that need guest speakers in the United States of America in the next 6 calendar months. And quite honestly, I would get 10, 12, 20 pages of mush from Google and spent hours combing through it, only to find out that probably 90% of it was already stale, dead, expired, non-existent. I'll ask that exact same question in a format, a technology like ChatGPT, and 3 seconds later, I have a list. Here's 27 conferences that are coming up. Here's the links to their websites. Here's the contact information. Game changer for me. I just saved hours. And if I multiply that by every day that I work during the month, it allows me to either spend more time with my clients, service my clients better or faster, or quite honestly, have more free time, which at the end of the day is not a bad thing.
Great to hear. Yeah, I use it quite a bit as well as some others. Are there any AI tools that you're thinking, you should maybe not try yet? We're just not there yet. Or in your experience or the people you're talking to, with everything out there, maybe it's not the right time for some of these yet. Anything there where you'd caution people away from or just not yet?
Not really. Like I said earlier, I think try it. If you break it, no big deal. What people need to remember about AI is what people needed to remember and still need to remember when the internet got very popular. It's not gospel. It's not 100% verified every single word, every single line, every single paragraph, every single day. If something looks odd to you and you're an accountant or a business owner or a tech person or an airline pilot, whatever you do for a living, if you get some data and you're looking at it and you go, I've never heard that before, or gee, that doesn't even sound like it's legal, your little alarm should go off and say, okay, now I've got to do some fact checking. Now I might go to some other resources. I might try to find some other sources. I can't remember off the top of my mind, but early on when AI came out, there was a law firm that got slapped down pretty aggressively. They did the right thing. They tried to build a case doing research with AI. And all of the pieces of the puzzle that they pulled were all prior court cases that had actually happened. But when they wanted to apply it to their particular use in a particular court in front of a particular judge, people read that and said, all of this wasn't connected. It didn't happen together. So we have a problem. And they sort of came down to the law firm and said, you know what, it's incumbent on you to do your due diligence. All you did was search this the way any civilian could, and it's not accurate. So now we have an issue. You have to use common sense. You have to take everything with a grain of salt. You have to say, what if? But, even to your point, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, when I was using ChatGPT to generate graphics for some of my presentations, you would get bodies floating in the air, people with 7 eyes and 14 fingers. I haven't seen any of that happen. So every day it's getting better. It's getting quicker. One thing I did notice a couple of weeks ago, I was putting together a presentation and I asked for some graphic design and it was really slow. And I did some digging and found out that, the AI system got kind of overwhelmed that week. And it wasn't me. It wasn't my technology. It was a drain on the system. Like so many people were trying to use it. It got slowed down.
Yeah, interesting. You're right. It's getting better every week. And I think it's interesting. You'd mentioned how the box is already opened. What do you say to people? I hear these posts sometimes like, I will only purchase graphics from a real person. And while I can appreciate that, I wonder if that's misguided. What do you feel about people like that who say, we can't forget about the human craft and the individuals behind the technologies who are fearful of whole professions being automated or augmented?
Well, I can appreciate that. I respect that. And I was one of those people early on. I thought, is every graphic designer on the planet going to lose their job? Who needs them anymore? And quite honestly, I've interfaced with, I know enough designers who are coming to me going, oh yeah, 90 days ago, this was the enemy. Now I'm in love. And, I was at a seminar, there was a speaker there. I was in Orlando. The speaker was from Chicago. And I'm stealing her phrase. And she basically looked at the audience and said, look, there's two ways to look at this tool. Competitor or collaborator. You make up in your own mind, in your own head, what you think it is. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't learn how to collaborate, your competitors who have collaborated and are collaborating with AI are going to pass you by. So, it might feel a little threatening to humans. I've always said this about any technology from day one. Robots, AI, the internet, you name it. We are still people dealing with people at the end of the day, and none of that can be replaced. I can type in to ChatGPT as a business owner and say, hey, I've got to deliver layoff news to my staff. What's the best thing for me to say? What's the best way for me to say it? And it's probably going to come up with some really eloquent answers. If I read those word for word, and that's not who I am, that's not my DNA, that's not my level of empathy or emotional intelligence, my entire team's going to look at me and go, you didn't write that. And so that means you don't mean that. So we're not listening. So, you have to use the tool to the best of your ability, but it's got to be a natural fit. There's a lot of times I proof my posts on LinkedIn and I run them through AI and I go, you know what? That's not the way I write. That's not the way I speak. People who know me will know that sounds foreign. So I'm going to stick with what I wrote, what I generated. But at least there's an option.
So Larry, you've consulted with lots of business. You've been in workplaces yourself. From a workplace perspective, what do you think will be the biggest change we'll see in the near term? Do you think it'll be everyone will have virtual assistants, or will the emails just get nicer because like everyone's running them through, no one's writing emails themselves? Or like, what are you thinking will begin to?
No, I think we're going to go through the typical learning curve that I sort of referenced before. There's going to be early adopters. There's going to be people straddling the fence. There's going to be companies who are late to join the dance and probably miss out on opportunities. I've never been a fan of all or nothing or everyone or no one. It's going to depend on the industry. I think there are specific industries where AI will advance more quickly and have deeper levels of impact. I think healthcare is one of those industries. If you can have data, let's say somebody, heaven forbid, is diagnosed with cancer. If you go to your doctor and your doctor's in a healthcare system that's pulling in data that's only captured in that healthcare system, it's pretty limiting. More data than we could probably find ourselves as patients, but still fairly limiting. If that doctor starts pulling data from a broader database or from all over the world without even having those political, socio-economic connections, and we can come up with 5 great treatment options out of 50 million versus one treatment option out of 500, I know where I'd be looking for help. I think it's going to look at, the industry, and think about it. Half the time, these things have been happening behind the scenes. How many times have people flown on a plane? How often was that plane on autopilot? More than we'd probably like to know, right? We all had Fisher-Price cash registers when we were kids growing up. And now what are we doing as adults? We're checking ourselves out at the checkout at the retail store or the grocery store. It's all technology. So you either get comfortable with it and humanize it and know when not to use it is probably the key thing. All right. Frank, if you walked into my office and had some really great news to share with me, or you walked in my office and had some horrible news to share with me, I would hope I would know from my experience how to have a conversation with you. If I turned around and typed in, Frank just said this, what do I say? That's going to be a huge failure. So a lot of common sense has to factor into this.
Sure. Interesting. So Larry, we mentioned that you're also a writer, and I have a copy of your book. We tried that once. Now, this was written, I think, before the AI began to take off. So curious lessons in this, if you think individuals reading it, which would AI help them, or are these kind of universal, whether you're using AI or not? So anything kind of related to these lessons, which are all about excuses that people use to sabotage their own success. So curious how the book may tie into it, people who are interested in your overall message as well as the topic.
Well, the whole premise of the book really was people get comfortable, complacent as individuals or as business people, offering up excuses. We don't have the time. We don't have the money. We tried that once. It didn't work. I have an accountant who handles all that, so I don't need to know about finance. There's a million excuses. And the premise of the book was stop, call a timeout, throw down the challenge flag on the field, do some root cause analysis. What's really causing the undesired result? And is it something that we can fix and work on? Or is it a legitimate, we're not going to be able to work through this. But I think sometimes in culture, because we're so busy and we're so focused on getting such instant results and instant gratification, we tolerate excuses. So as far as the book as a whole, there's 13 chapters, 13 excuses that I address. The bottom line is still this: AI isn't going to make you a better leader. AI is not going to, it can certainly create new excuses for you if you ask it to, but it's not going to solve all of your problems. It may bring you some more data. It may bring you some thought process to solve a problem that you may have not thought of on your own before. And that's how it should be used. But it really comes down to an accountability issue. And at the end of the day, there's no laptop, no computer, no supercomputer, or no AI system in the world that can make either one of us accountable. We have to look in the mirror every day and hold ourselves accountable. Or as leaders, build cultures where accountability is the expectation every day.
Great. So AI is one part of the future digital revolution. Some companies are aiming to produce advanced robots this year that would be available for individuals. What are your thoughts about robots? And do you feel that is part of the AI question or broader matter to consider?
Well, I think it's going to be, again, it's going to be industry specific. I think we have to be human about it. I think the fast food industry is a great example. It's difficult. It's getting more difficult to find a 15, 16, 17-year-old who wants to work a deep fryer at a fast food restaurant. At the other end of the spectrum, we've seen wages across the country in the fast food industry driven up because there are some people trying to support an entire family on the wages of the fast food industry. And some people will argue that the industry wasn't built for that purpose, and that's why wages aren't at that level. But when you look at some of these places, and there's restaurants locally here, I'm in Western New York, and there's stock being offered by some of these companies where robots are either on the floor serving you, taking your order, or they're in the kitchen. And some of the inventors of these robots have said things like, you know what, if 500-degree grease splashes up on the robot keeps working. If that happens to a human, we feel bad, they get hurt, they have to leave work. This whole thing spins out of control. Now, I'm always think about it. How long has surgery been robotically assisted in the United States of America? A long time. But people didn't think about it unless their surgeon said to them, oh, by the way, I'm doing this robotically, this procedure. But it just didn't start last week. I think it's going to be very industry specific. And I think there are certain industries and certain jobs where a robot's never going to cut it. I consulted a manufacturing facility a few years ago, and they had one robot as a test. And they said, you know what? They referred to the robot as a female, and they said she works 24/7, 365, doesn't take a break, doesn't take a lunch break, doesn't go to the bathroom, worked all day on Christmas, worked on Christmas Eve, worked on New Year's Eve, worked on New Year's Day. The only time there's ever anything wrong is if, like, we forget to charge the robot. But other than that, it's spot on perfect. Do I ever want to walk into a place where there are no humans? No, because you know me well enough, Frank. I'm a brick and mortar, put people in a room with me kind of guy. But I think there are certainly many occupations where there's going to be more room for robotics.
Great. So just a few more questions. This has been great, Larry. I thought with the topic that we will have one of the AI engines ask you a question. So what I have teed up, based on the information available about Larry Mietus's book, we tried that once, and other popular excuses, suggest an interview question. And here it is. This is from Gemini 2.0 Flash. Considering your book focuses on identifying and overcoming common excuses in business, which of the 13 excuses you address do you find is the most pervasive or the most damaging to innovation and progress, particularly when it comes to adapting to newer technologies like AI? And let me say that was probably better than any question I came up. So it was interesting what it came up with. And that was just done right now, so I didn't pre-do that. So
a great question from Gemini. And my hands down answer is there's a chapter in my book called That Culture Stuff is Crap. And even though the name of my company is Speaking of Strategy, and I'm a big believer in strategy, I'll take luck any day, but strategy wrapped around some luck is even better. But I think moving forward as business people, business owners, it's really incumbent on us to build cultures that are still human focused, but realize the benefits of AI. And that's going to be a choice. There are going to be people that build cultures that say, we're not looking, we're pretending it's going to go away. And there are going to be cultures that say, how can we use this in ways we're not even thinking of yet? And it's not, how can we use this in ways we're not thinking of yet to eliminate people? It's to make people more productive. What if we got to a point where we could pay everybody for 25 hours a week instead of 40, but we made more money and more profit at the end of the year? Those people on our team working 25 hours a week knew how to embrace and maximize artificial intelligence. I'm not sure people would complain. I haven't been anywhere lately where anybody said they wanted to work more.
Cool. So any final thoughts for our listeners? And also, where can people find you? Do you have a website, LinkedIn?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. My website is Speaking of Strategy. If you Google Speaking of Strategy or Larry Mietus or Leadership Larry or Chief Excuse Obliterator, those are all me. I'll come up in the first 3-4 pages of a Google search. And my promise, Frank, when I speak, when I'm a media guest, I consider our audience, your audience now, and myself to be friends. If someone has a question they want to ask in a day, a week, a month, a year, or 10 years, as long as I'm alive, I will answer them. My email address is leadershiplarry@gmail.com. And, people still have to help each other out, especially in leadership roles. There are some people that think leadership is this lonely island and you have to sit there all by yourself. And I've always said, you're alone if you let yourself be alone.
Thanks very much, Larry. So for everyone listening, we'll put all of that in the show notes and transcript, including the links. And otherwise, thank you for joining us today on TechXY, and look forward to our next episode coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Frank. Be well.